Biden's early announcement isn't a sign of confidence. If he were sure of his prospects, he'd hold off while Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis are fighting. President Biden isn't afraid of running against Donald Trump next year, but fellow Democrats appear to have spooked him into announcing his re-election bid ahead of schedule. Mr. Biden initially intended to hold off on a formal announcement until late spring or early summer. Why draw media attention away from Mr. Trump's legal problems or from his public feuding with Florida Governor Ron DeSantis? When your political opponents are fighting with one another, it's better not to interfere. Recent polling, however, might have changed Mr. Biden's mind. An NBC News survey released this week put his job approval rating at 38%, and Democratic governors with presidential ambitions, California's Gavin Newsom, Illinois' J.B. Pritzker, New Jersey's Phil Murphy, have been lurking. Perhaps Mr. Biden reasoned that an earlier announcement would give him a bump and placate any serious potential challengers. Republicans believe that Mr. Biden's greatest vulnerability is his age. When he took office, he was already the oldest president in the nation's history. At 80, he looks frail, garbles his speech, loses his train of thought. If the president had wanted to put his country and party ahead of his political ambitions, he could have announced that he ran for office in 2020 to restore some normalcy to the political process, that he had accomplished that goal, and that it was now time to pass the baton to a new generation of leaders. Instead, Democrats will have an octogenarian in decline at the top of the ticket and a running mate in Kamala Harris whom few people in either party believe is a suitable replacement. Still, Republicans should be wary of overplaying the age card. Mr. Biden wasn't a spring chicken when he ran in 2020, and voters apparently didn't care. If his opponent is Mr. Trump, who will be 78 by Election Day, it's hard to see those past supporters turning on Mr. Biden simply because he's too old. Polling shows that around half of Democrats don't want Mr. Biden to seek a second term, but that doesn't mean they want back his candidacy. In an Associated Press NORC Center for Public Affairs research poll released last week, 78% of Democratic respondents approved of Mr. Biden's job performance, and 81% said that they would, probably or certainly support him in a general election. In most of the hypothetical 2024 matchups between Mr. Trump and Mr. Biden, the president has been ahead, which is one reason Democrats are hoping Mr. Trump is the Republican nominee. They know that Mr. Biden's record in office, from the premature Afghanistan retreat that emboldened America's enemies to the record-high inflation that has prices rising faster than wages, will be difficult to defend. And they know that Mr. Trump is likely to spend less time attacking misguided liberal policies and more time spewing conspiracy theories about why he no longer lives in the White House. Mr. Biden's age won't save the GOP from its current dilemma, which is that the leading Republican candidate for president unites Democratic voters like no other force in politics. There's a reason Mr. Biden's video announcement on Tuesday opens with footage of Trump supporters ransacking the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. Democrats were never in love with Mr. Biden. He won because the country despised his opponent, just as Mr. Trump won 4 years earlier mainly because the country so disliked Hillary Clinton. Biden supporters understand this dynamic in ways that Trump fans have never fully grasped. Because of what Mr. Trump accomplished in 2016, it would be foolish to count him out next year. But Whit Ayers, a veteran GOP strategist, told me that Republicans who believe that someone other than the former president stands a better chance of defeating Mr. Biden should take note of what Democrats did in 2020. It's not how many people start the race, it's how many people stay in after they have no chance of winning, Mr. Ayers said. And once Biden won South Carolina in 2020, literally within hours the rest of the field dropped out and endorsed him. Whether the eventual Republican field is willing and able to exercise similar discipline remains to be seen. And there's always the possibility that Mr. Trump will urge his supporters to stay home for the general election if he's not the nominee, or play spoiler by running as a third-party candidate by siphoning off GOP votes. But a Wall Street Journal poll last week had Mr. DeSantis, who is 44, beating Mr. Biden by 3 points in a hypothetical matchup and Mr. Trump losing to the president by the same margin. If Republicans want to make an issue of the president's advanced years, put him on a debate stage alone with someone close to half his age. Biden's early announcement isn't a sign of confidence. If he were sure of his prospects, he'd hold off while Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis are fighting. President Biden isn't afraid of running against Donald Trump next year, but fellow Democrats appear to have spooked him into announcing his re-election bid ahead of schedule. Mr. Biden initially intended to hold off on a formal announcement until late spring or early summer. Why draw